Okay, let's unpack this. Imagine you are a CTO, right? You've just deployed this, I don't know, brilliant new AI hiring tool or maybe a predictive customer service bot, and it's doing great. It's cutting your workload in half. The board is thrilled. Your team is celebrating.
As they should be.
Exactly, as they should be. But right now, literally as we are speaking, because you didn't thoroughly document your training data, that exact same tool is legally classified by regulators as a high-risk system, and it's operating with absolutely zero governance.
Which is terrifying.
It really is. And you're not alone in this. 8% of EU organizations are doing exactly this today. So I guess the question is, if you are a European business leader or a developer listening to this deep dive, are you entirely confident that your AI systems aren't a ticking 30 million euro time bomb?
Yeah, that is, it's a very sobering visualization, but I think a necessary one, because you really have to establish the stakes immediately here.
Right.
That 30 million euro figure, or actually it's up to 6% of a company's global turnover, whichever is higher.
Wow, 6%?
Yeah, it's massive. And it isn't some hypothetical, worst case scenario drawn up in a think tank somewhere. That is the codified reality of the EU AI Act. We are rapidly approaching the critical enforcement phase in January 2026.
Which is basically tomorrow in corporate timeline terms.
Exactly. And this isn't just a matter of avoiding an eye-watering financial penalty, right? For anyone operating in the European tech space, particularly in innovation hubs like Helsinki, where so much of this development is centered, this is fundamentally about corporate survival.
Survival, yeah. Which is really the core mission of our deep dive today. We're looking at this comprehensive readiness blueprint from AetherLink, and specifically we're focusing on how organizations are handling this impending deadline. Because what their data shows is that companies that are just sort of, I don't know, delaying their AI Act readiness until 2026, they are going to face a complete nightmare scenario of emergency retrofitting.
Oh, absolutely. Emergency retrofitting is the worst case scenario.
Right, because the costs for pulling apart a live AI system to basically staple compliance onto it after the fact, they're exponential. So we really want to figure out what actual structural readiness looks like today and how proactive governance is actually secretly a massive competitive advantage.
Yeah, and to avoid that emergency retrofitting, we really need to understand the mechanical timeline of this law and, honestly, more importantly, where companies realistically stand today.
Right.
Because, it's very easy to think of 2026 as some distant regulatory cloud, but phase one of the enforcement timeline, it's already active.
Yeah, I saw that in the blueprint. Phase 1 actually rolled out between August 2024 and December 2025. And this is the phase dealing with outright bans, right?
Right. Those are the absolute red lines. We are talking about subliminal manipulation algorithms or social scoring systems. Those are completely banned.
Oh, no gray area there?
None. If you were operating those, you're already operating illegally.
Yeah.
But phase two is the real cliff edge we are approaching. That hits in January 2026, and it demands strict, uncompromising compliance for all high-risk AI systems.
And high risk is a very specific legal definition in this context. Like, the blueprint lists things like biometric identification in healthcare, or AI used in critical infrastructure like energy grids, or even algorithms managing hiring and recruitment.
Exactly. So if your AI makes decisions that significantly impact human lives or safety or fundamental rights, the regulator considers it high risk.
Makes sense.
And by January 2026, those systems are going to require rigorous risk management frameworks, flawless data quality documentation, actual human oversight protocols, and official CE marking.
Wait, I want to pause on one of those terms for a second just to make sure we're completely clear. CE marking. I mean, most of us know that as like the little safety sticker you see on the back of electronics.
Yeah, or children's toys.
Right, proving it won't catch fire or something. They are actually applying that physical hardware standard to software.
Yeah, that is the perfect way to visualize it. The European Union is essentially saying that a high-risk algorithm needs the exact same rigorous safety certification as a pacemaker or a commercial elevator.
That's wild.
You can't just push it live and patch the bugs later. It has to be certified safe before it enters the market. And right on the heels of that, Phase 3 hits in 2026 and 2027, and that sweeps in general-purpose AI.
So, meaning your large language models and generative AI.
Exactly. The transparency and systemic risk obligations for those foundational models are immense. Current estimates suggest compliance for large enterprises running those could cost between 2 and 5 million euros annually.
2 to 5 million euros a year, just to keep the lights on, legally speaking.
Just for compliance.
Which really brings us to the reality check for a lot of organizations. The AetherLink source material outlines this 5-level governance maturity framework. I'm actually looking at it right here. Level 1 is reactive. So that's ad hoc AI deployments, developers just kind of doing their own thing, basically no audit trails.
Right.
And then level 2 is managed. So maybe you have a basic compliance checklist on a shared drive, but it's totally informal. Where are most companies actually sitting on this spectrum right now?
The concerning reality is that most enterprises, I mean, even in hyper-advanced tech hubs like Helsinki, are currently sitting at level 1 or level 2.
Really? Even the advanced ones?
Yeah, because they build for performance and speed. They don't build for auditability, which is a very dangerous place to be because the regulatory minimum by 2026 is level 3.
And level 3 is defined governance.
Exactly. That means having a formal AI governance board, standardized policies across the whole company, systematic risk categorization. I mean, you cannot fake your way into level 3 over a weekend. It requires structural organizational change.
It honestly feels like operating at level 1 right now is it's like building a skyscraper without checking the city zoning laws. You're just pouring concrete and hoping the inspectors don't notice.
That's exactly what it is.
Right. But I have to ask the hard question here. If the minimum requirement next year is level 3, how realistically can a company jump 2 full maturity levels in 12 months without completely grinding their engineering teams to a halt? Because developers, they want to build features. They don't want to fill out risk categorization forms all day.
Sure, they don't. But if we connect this to the bigger picture, it isn't about stopping innovation. It's about channeling it safely. The answer to your question is actually counterintuitive. You don't just aim for level 3 to check a box. You actually want to aim for level 4.
Level 4 being optimized governance.
Right. At level 4, compliance isn't this manual bottleneck where a developer has to stop working to fill out a form. It's fully integrated into the development pipeline. You have real-time compliance monitoring, automated auditing built right into the code base.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, so it becomes a competitive advantage because your systems are inherently trustworthy and frictionless. But you cannot get to level 4 or even level 3 without establishing that foundational structure. And that means creating the mandatory AI governance board.
Okay, let's get into the weeds on this governance board, because this is where my jaw genuinely dropped reading the source material. The EU AI Act essentially demands that organizations deploying high-risk systems have a board with highly specific oversight roles. We're talking about a chief AI officer, a technical AI lead architect, a data governance officer, a legal and compliance lead, and an independent ethics and audit function.
That is the structural requirement for high-risk deployment, yes.
But think about the listener right now who might be running, I don't know, a mid-sized startup, hiring 5 full-time, highly specialized C-suite or director-level executives just to manage compliance. I mean, that sounds financially impossible. That would bankrupt a mid-sized firm before they even launched their core product.
Well, it absolutely would if you interpret the regulation as requiring 5 brand new in-house full-time hires. But the EU AI Act operates heavily on the principle of proportionality.
Okay, meaning what exactly?
Regulators understand that a 100-person startup cannot maintain the same governance overhead as a multinational banking conglomerate. The legal requirement is really about accountability and documented decision-making.
Wait, so a regulator is actually okay with a part-time consultant signing off on the compliance of a high-risk medical AI. They don't require an in-house employee whose neck is on the line.
No, let me clarify. The liability always remains with the company deploying the AI. You cannot outsource your legal risk. What you can outsource is the specialized expertise required to build the framework.
Ah, okay. That makes more sense.
This is where fractional services become critical. The blueprint highlights the use of Ethermind consulting services for exactly this reason. Instead of hiring a full-time technical AI lead architect, mid-market firms bring in fractional experts.
So they basically rent the expertise.
Exactly. You assign the ultimate accountability, like the chief AI officer role, to an existing founder or your current CTO. But you use an external consultant to build out the complex regulatory workflows, run the audit methodologies, fill the technical gaps. It provides the exact documented governance the regulator demands, but it scales with your actual budget and your AI footprint.
That makes a lot more sense. So it's about proving the function is rigorously executed, not necessarily paying for a dedicated desk in the office.
Right.
And speaking of proving things to regulators, the deep dive brings up something incredibly nuanced, ISO 42001.
Yes.
For the listener, this is the international standard for AI management systems. But here is the catch. ISO 42001 is not legally mandated by the EU AI Act. The text of the law doesn't say, you must acquire this specific certification. So why on earth would a company voluntarily put themselves through this grueling, expensive international certification process if the law doesn't strictly force them to?
Because it provides the exact operational blueprint regulators are looking for. Think of it this way. The EU AI Act tells you what you need to do. You must manage risk. You must ensure data quality. You must maintain human oversight.
Right. The what?
But it's a piece of legislation. It doesn't give you a technical manual. ISO 42001 tells you how to do it. It provides the specific operational controls. Early adopters of ISO 42001 are actually seeing their EU AI Act compliance timelines accelerate by 35%.
35%. Just because they aren't guessing what the regulator wants to see.
Exactly. They're using an internationally recognized standard that maps directly to the legal requirements.
Yeah.
When a regulator knocks on your door in 2026 and asks to see your risk management documentation, if you hand them a custom, homegrown spreadsheet, they're going to scrutinize every single cell.
Because they have no idea if your methodology is sound.
Right. But if you hand them an ISO 42001 certified portfolio, you drastically reduce that audit friction. You're speaking their language. It builds immediate trust.
I saw a fantastic case study in the AetherLink blueprint that proves how this actually works in practice. It's a fictional but highly representative tech firm in Helsinki called MIDI-Diag.
It's a great example.
So they are a 120-person health tech firm, and they built this proprietary deep learning model for lung cancer detection. Because it's medical diagnostic AI, it automatically falls into the high-risk category.
Without question.
And so they are staring down the barrel of the January 2026 deadline. They have a brilliant product, but absolutely zero governance framework, incomplete documentation on their training data, and no third-party audit trail. They are effectively at level 1 maturity.
The worst place to be.
Right. So how did they actually fix that without just pulling all their engineers off the product?
So they engaged Ethermind Consultancy for a 6-month compliance acceleration program. Month 1 was purely diagnostic. It was a readiness scan. And they identified 23 major compliance gaps.
23.
Yeah. Missing risk management, absent data governance, no human oversight protocols. It's actually a very standard reality check for brilliant engineering teams who focus entirely on model accuracy.
Right. They just want the thing to work.
Exactly. Then months 2 and 3 were about establishing that AI governance board we discussed. They appointed their existing chief medical officer as the AI governance lead, so they were utilizing internal talent, and they drafted the legal frameworks for how the model would be versioned and updated.
But month 4 is where the real heavy lifting happens in the source material. It says they had to audit their training data, recataloging 40,000 medical images. What does that actually mean mechanically? How does a bias analysis work in this context?
This is the unglamorous but absolutely essential mechanism of AI compliance. If your training data is skewed, your entire model is legally radioactive. For MedIAG, auditing 40,000 images meant going back into the database to verify 2 things.
Okay, what were they?
First, legal consent. Did every single patient explicitly agree their scan could be used to train an algorithm? If not, that data point has to be purged entirely.
Wow, so you literally have to throw out the data.
Yes. And second, statistical bias. Bias analysis means looking at the distribution of the data. Are all the lung scans from one specific demographic? Are they all from one specific brand of MRI machine?
Wait, the brand of the machine matters.
Massively. If the algorithm only learns what cancer looks like on a high-resolution Siemens machine, and you deployed it to a rural hospital using an older Philips machine, the accuracy drops dramatically. They had to prove to the regulator that their data was diverse enough to work safely across the entire population.
That makes total sense, and it leads perfectly into month 5, where the blueprint says they operationalized risk management and built automated monitoring for model drift. Could you actually explain the mechanism of model drift?
Yeah, so model drift happens because the real world changes, but your historical training data doesn't. To use the MRI example again, if a hospital updates its imaging software, the slight change in pixel contrast might confuse an AI that was trained on the old software. The model's accuracy literally drifts downward over time.
So how do you fix that?
MediaAg had to build automated software monitors that constantly check the AI's real-time accuracy against its original baseline. If the accuracy drops by even 2%, the system automatically flags a human operator and pauses the diagnostic output.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting for the listener. Month 6, they achieve ISO 42001 certification. Now, the assumption is that those 6 months were just a massive, painful drain on resources.
That's what everyone assumes.
But it wasn't just overhead. By building out this rigorous automated governance, MediaAg actually deployed their system 4 months ahead of the legal deadline. Because their system was so well documented and statistically trustworthy, they easily expanded into 5 different hospital systems across the Nordics.
Which is huge for a company that size.
Massive.
Yeah.
Furthermore, by automating their governance and monitoring, they reduced their operational costs by 22%. And the absolute cherry on top, that regulatory confidence, that proof of maturity, it unlocked a 3.2 million euro Series B funding round.
And that is the vital takeaway for anyone evaluating AI adoption today. Systematic governance is not a tax on innovation. It is a competitive enabler.
Exactly.
When an enterprise customer or an investor looks at a tech startup now, they aren't just looking at the intelligence of the model, they are actively calculating the legal liability.
Yeah.
MediaAg proved they were a safe, audited bet.
Right, but MediaAg was able to pull off that 6-month compliance sprint because they built their code from scratch. They owned the entire pipeline.
Sure.
But what happens if you don't? I mean, what if you're a company that just buys an off-the-shelf AI tool or plugs into a vendor's API?
The third-party risk layer. This is arguably the most overlooked trap of the entire EU AI Act.
The numbers in the deep dive are staggering. According to Gartner, 64% of enterprise AI incidents involve third-party systems, but only 28% of organizations actually have Vendor AI Act compliance requirements written into their contracts.
It's a huge blind spot.
To put an analogy to this, it is essentially like getting a massive financial penalty because your taxi driver was speeding. The EU AI Act means you are still on the hook for your vendor's technology if you are the one deploying it to your end users.
Exactly. The regulator does not care that you bought the recommendation engine or the computer vision platform from some startup in Silicon Valley. If you deploy it in Europe, you own the compliance risk.
So you're holding the bag.
You are holding the bag. If your vendor's training data was scraped illegally from the internet without consent, or if their model is inherently biased and you integrate it into your workflow, you are the one facing the millions in fines.
So how do you practically protect yourself from that? You can't exactly just demand a vendor hand over their proprietary source code so you can audit their black box algorithm. They'd just laugh at you.
No, they wouldn't give you the code. You don't audit their code. You demand to audit their conformity assessments. You protect yourself through rigorous due diligence and contractual armor.
Meaning what, practically speaking?
You have to establish vendor compliance questionnaires immediately. You need to know their formal risk classification. You need to see their transparency documentation. And you really need to know exactly how they handle model drift.
Because if they don't know, you're the one in trouble.
Right. And most importantly, you need audit rights and compliance escalation clauses written into your procurement contracts right now, well before 2026. If they cannot produce an ISO certification or an equivalent standard, you simply cannot safely plug their API into your business.
I want to transition to one more massive technological hurdle outlined in the blueprint. I'm looking at this section on Etherbot systems and agentic AI, and honestly, it feels like a science fiction problem that we suddenly have to solve legally today.
Yeah, what's fascinating here is the fundamental paradox between where AI development is rapidly heading and what the law actually requires on paper.
Let's break that down for the listener. Agentic AI things like these Etherbot systems are completely autonomous. They are designed to operate with minimal to zero human intervention.
Right.
You give the agent a broad goal like manage this customer's refund or optimize this corporate financial portfolio, and the agent goes off, makes sequential decisions, interacts with other software, and executes workflows entirely on its own.
And the industry is moving heavily toward agent-first operations because the efficiency gains are staggering. But here's the collision course. An AI agent managing financial transactions or processing sensitive customer data will almost certainly be classified as a high-risk system.
Right, because of the impact.
Exactly. And the EU AI Act explicitly demands human oversight for all high-risk systems.
Which is a complete paradox. Because the entire selling point of an autonomous agent is that a human isn't overseeing every single action.
Precisely.
I mean, if a human operator has to manually approve every single step of a refund process, it's not an autonomous agent anymore. It's just a really complicated calculator. So how on earth do you legally deploy an Etherbot or any autonomous agent under this law?
You have to utilize a structural concept called compliance by architecture. You cannot build a fully autonomous black box let it loose on your network, and then try to slap a compliance manual on top of it later. It just will not survive regulatory scrutiny in 2026.
Yeah.
The governance has to be coded into the agent's very DNA.
I want to know what that actually looks like in the code, because you can't just type "be compliant" into a command line.
No, you can't. It requires specific, non-negotiable architectural choices. First, you must build explainability logs. The agent must continuously document the mathematical reasoning behind its decisions in a format that an auditor can later reconstruct.
So it's essentially the black box on a commercial airplane.
That's a great way to put it.
It doesn't prevent the AI from making a decision, but if the AI, say, denies a customer a refund, the auditor can open the black box and see the exact mathematical breadcrumbs of why it chose to do that.
Yes, it ensures the autonomy is fully transparent. Second, you implement human-in-the-loop boundaries through hard-coded thresholds.
Okay, like limits on what it can do.
Exactly. For example, the agent can issue customer refunds up to 500 euros completely autonomously. But the code dictates that anything above that amount automatically pauses the workflow, alerts the human operator, and waits for manual authorization. The autonomy exists, but only within a legally defined sandbox.
Right. But what happens if the agent goes rogue or starts hallucinating?
That brings us to the final and really most critical architectural requirement.
Yeah.
Absolute kill switch protocols. If a compliance risk is detected or if the agent begins exhibiting model drift, there must be a mechanism to disable the autonomous functions within seconds.
And I imagine that's tricky to build.
Very. Architecturally, this means building with microservices, isolating the agent from your core database so that hitting the kill switch doesn't crash your entire enterprise resource planning system along with it.
Wow.
Designing this compliance by architecture adds upfront development costs, absolutely. But it is non-negotiable. If you're developing agentic AI today without these safety valves, you're building a product that will be illegal to turn on in 2026.
This has been an incredibly dense but absolutely vital deep dive. I mean, we've covered the timelines, the maturity models, the mechanics of fractional governance, and the whole paradox of agentic AI.
We really ran the gamut.
We did. So as we wrap up, I want to distill this down. If you're a CTO or a business leader listening to this, my #1 takeaway is about reframing how you view compliance. The MEDIAG story proves it. Stop looking at the EU AI Act as a tax or a speed bump. Treat it as a competitive enabler. By building systematic governance now, you are building trust. You're reducing operational costs through automation. You're making your company vastly more attractive to investors. And you are positioning yourself to sweep up market share from competitors who are going to be paralyzed by emergency retrofitting in 2026.
I share that perspective entirely.
Yeah.
And, my takeaway connects directly to the future of the technology itself. Agentic AI cannot be retrofitted. The era of move fast and break things is officially over when it comes to autonomous systems.
He really is.
If you are developing agent-first operations today, you must build compliance by design into the architecture from day one. Explainability logs, operational thresholds, kill switches. If those aren't actively in your code base right now, your product will not survive the 2026 enforcement cliff.
It is a profound shift in how software has to be engineered.
It really is. And I'll leave you with this one final thought to mull over. We've talked extensively about enterprise compliance costs, 2 to 5 million euros a year, just to manage these large models legally. What happens to the open source community?
Oh, that's a good point.
If the baseline cost of proving an AI is safe becomes that astronomically high, does the EU AI Act accidentally kill the garage startup developer? We have to ask ourselves if this regulation, designed to protect us, might inadvertently leave the future of AI solely in the hands of the few massive tech monopolies wealthy enough to afford the legal fees.
That is a fascinating question, and one that is going to shape the entire European tech landscape over the next decade. For more AI insights, visit etherlink.ai.